So I just watched my fourth Gregg Araki movie and I am not well because of it. I'm going to be talking about the movie Mysterious Skin with an emphasis on trauma and our coping mechanisms that come after. Also, fair warning, this is a very intense movie that deals with SA and similar other topics, so be advised. So Mysterious Skin is a movie that's actually based off a book that follows the lives of two young men, Neil and Brian, who both have traumatic events in their childhood that lead to Neil becoming a sex worker and Brian becoming obsessed with aliens, and he's positive that he's been abducted. Now, like I said before, this is my fourth Gregg Araki movie, so at this point, I think I would consider myself a fan, but I do want to note this is arguably the most linear of all of his movies that I've seen so far. The plot is pretty straightforward, and it kind of misses the comedy and whimsy of his other movies, which you probably don't want that in this movie anyway. And also, I assume that's in part to it being based off of a book. The movie, however, does still have this one thing that Gregg Araki does really well that I always love. I always look for it in every movie now at this point. He always puts these moments in his films where the characters are either talking to themselves or talking to a friend, but really they're kind of speaking to us, the audience. And it's like the world falls away for a second. In this particular movie, it's the moment where Neil and his friend Wendy are standing in front of a giant projection screen at a drive-in, and they're talking about how incredible it would be for both of them to be standing there in a movie about their lives play. And for me, I just found that moment in the movie to be something so beautiful. It reminded me a lot of a connection I have with one of my friends. And Gregg Araki is just so good at creating scenes and capturing that particular feeling. And the more you watch his movies, the more you kind of start to look out for it. So for me, my biggest takeaway from this movie was really about how trauma affects people and how it can really form a person even 10 years after it's happened. Neil now puts himself in dangerous situations and has become a prostitute. And at first you see him almost happy about it. He's making money and he's able to separate himself from his work until later on he has two encounters that really change him and that really make him realize just how real this all is for him. And that's how he's coped with his trauma. He's able to separate himself from his body and use it to get money, and that's what he knows until something happens that makes him aware of that and the consequences of his lifestyle, the way he's been living. And then we have Brian, who has found himself on the complete opposite end of the spectrum. From his trauma, he's become nearly antisocial, spending all of his time obsessing over aliens and determined to figure out the truth behind him missing whole chunks of time in his life years before. He doesn't know who he is without aliens and abductions, and they're all he thinks about. His coping is all distraction, covered up in a blanket of discovering the truth. And that to me is really what this movie is about. This movie is showing how we can all be similarly traumatized but come out so different. It's another movie that kind of humanizes the rest of the world for me a little bit, because it reminds me that we never really know what someone else is going through, and for that maybe we should show people a little bit more kindness and grace. Overall, I do want to give the movie a 7 out of 10. It had that typical Gregg Araki style where when it came to how graphic it was, but it actually was a nice change of pace for me after watching the Teenage Apocalypse trilogy a year last year. I liked this movie because of how real it was. And while it was a hard watch, I always do think there's a space for movies like that with intense themes like that. So would I watch it again? Honestly, probably not. But once was enough. But I still have more Gregg Araki movies on my list, so I'm definitely going to be watching those in the future.